did you think, okay, I can make Formula One?
My only aim was to get into Formula One. I wasn't going motor racing just to take part. I held the lap record at every track we raced.
Andy Priaulx, who then went on to work with in the future after your racing career, said that you were one of the most naturally talented drivers he's seen. Formula One drivers, Formula 2 drivers passing away, losing legs. Was that never a fear that came into your mind?
Oh, I definitely didn't want to die, but I found it was an advantage.
And you have an incredible example of this with Kevin Magnussen, who you trained.
His vision when I tracked him was very low to start with. He corrected to that video within 5 or 6 laps.
Do you believe in what's called as natural talent for a driver?
Why then didn't you make Formula One, in your opinion? Why did racing stop for you?
Oh, dear.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Backseat Drivers Podcast. Today we have an epic guest in the form of John Pratt. I hope you enjoy, because we really did. Hit the subscribe button and thank you to John for joining us today. Enjoy the episode. So John, apart from owning this lovely place, iZone, running it as a business, coaching drivers from every level, like world-class drivers like myself, obviously, and your more amateur drivers. And Jordan. And they come here to train and get better as a driver, and that's what you do now. Mm-hmm. But I want to go all the way back to young John. How and why did you get into motorsport racing? How did it happen?
Well, I have to go back a long way. My dad used to be a club racer before the war, and I'd always be going through his albums, his books, and it just sort of, I think from a very early age, it bit me that that's what I wanted to do. And to be honest, all the way through, and I'm probably going back to when I was 6 or 7 years old, and then all the way through my school days, all I ever wanted to be was a racing driver. And my dad taught me to drive when I was 10. I'd always drive from the passenger seat and do the steering. I'd do the gears, even when he was double declutching and heeling and towing, as you used to have to do in cars in those days. I would time the gear changes for that. Even just things like pushing the supermarket trolley, that was like important to me. And anything mechanical was important. Like mowing the lawn was my job, and I treated the lawnmower like a racing car. I would clean it, look after it, and I don't know what it is. I was just born with a fascination for mechanical things, and it sort of grew from there. So as soon as when I was at prep school, I was promised by my parents that they would buy me a go-kart if I passed my common entrance, and I failed by 1%.
1%?
1%.
So you're a smart kid then?
Well, no, I wasn't particularly. And so that was an absolute tragedy. But so then when I was 18, I went to the Jim Russell School. In those days, they did an 8-day course at Snetterton. And then I did a few races at the Jim Russell School.
So that was your introduction. What was the Jim Russell School? Just explain.
Jim Russell School. Well, at the time, it was the biggest. In those days, you couldn't just sort of hire a car and go race and do track days and things like you do now. And pretty much everything was single seaters in those days. There wasn't a career for drivers really in sports cars or touring cars or anything like that. And so it was very much about single seaters. And the Jim Russell School, I think they had places in America as well, at Silverstone, Mallory Park. So they operated around the country, and it was run by a guy called John Kirkpatrick, who was at that time was like a god to me. And I've never seen anybody be able to control people. He had tremendous charisma, and he had a big influence on although we had a few fallings out because I didn't always do as he told me what to do. But that was my start, and that was the most amazing 8 days I had in my life. And after that, there was going to be no go. Well, depending on my parents funding me for 2 years, there wasn't going to be any way of going back. I did pretty well when I was at Jim Russell School, and I thought, oh my God, I'm amazing. I'm really good. And then a guy called David Sears, who won the Formula 4 championship that year, turned up on the 8th day. He turned up just to do a bit of testing at the end of the day, and we all went down to what was the old bridge at Snetterton. And I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. The corner that we would take, relatively at a pedestrian rate, he would come through there sideways, and I'd never seen that before.
And this in what car?
This is in a Formula Ford. Oh, this is in Formula Fords.
Okay.
Yeah, where everyone started. And then he was flat through the bomb hole, flat round the old quorum, and then flat through the most dangerous corner I've ever been through, Russell Bend, just before the pits. And we were all listening. We think he didn't lift or brake or anything like that. So I went from sort of thinking, wow, I'm really good, to, oh my God, there's a lot to come from here. So then when I left that, I did my first ever race here at Silverstone on what was the old club circuit. And again, in the morning, there weren't many people going around, and I thought I was going really well. And then in the afternoon, all the boys that were racing at the weekend, they came along, and I'm coming into the old Woodcote corner, where you're coming pretty quick in those days, and it was a sharp right. And I'll never forget, I braked for the corner, and this guy, Louis Schaefer, waited for me to brake. He then braked after he'd passed me, pulled in, had time to pull in, and then went sideways through the corner. I just thought,
Yeah.
how am I ever going to do that?
Well, this is actually the question I was going to ask, because Toto Wolff has said the same thing. One time he saw this from actually a year of experience, or maybe a few years' experience. He saw, I don't know what driver it was, but he said they passed him, and he saw this driver go through the corner ahead like he's never seen a car on the limit before, and just thought, I can't do that.
Yeah.
So the question was, when you saw that, did you think at some point I will be able to do that?
Certainly not at that point. But it fired me up to, there's more to be had. And I had to go through a lot of pain, because my whole life was about motorsport. I think I'd known the guys that Jim Russell said that they thought I had some potential. So I thought I carried that for a little bit. But the real world, in my day, Formula Ford, everyone did Formula Ford. So you couldn't avoid the good guys. All the good guys would be racing against each other every weekend. And so the standard was incredibly high. And I just had to persevere. And what was nice, I remember actually after my first ever race weekend, I thought, if I could just get in the top 10, I could retire and think that I've really achieved something. That was how I looked at it. And then just through, obviously perseverance. In those days, we didn't have data or anything like that. You had to learn yourself. And if you were lucky, you could follow somebody, you pick a quick guy, go out behind them, maybe hang on for 2 or 3 corners, or 1 corner to start with, then 2 or 3, then 4. And eventually you get to the point where you can almost hang on for a lap. And you just pretty much learn from what they did. We just had a rev counter, and you would just look at your revs on the exit of the corner to see if you come out quicker or not. There was no other gauge, and your lap times would come 1 lap in arrears, because you'd do a lap, you'd go past the pits, they'd click the stopwatch.
Of course, yeah.
Then they'd put the time on the board, and you would then get that time the next lap, and you'd have to remember, what did I do that lap that was either better or worse? Right. But I think it bred, was I try and get the guys to do here. We talk about noting. That's we were really good at developing ourselves. So just gradually getting better and better and better, and then finding out you can actually stay with the really quick guys. People that I really looked up to these guys. Yeah. That was an amazing feeling. And then when I eventually won my first race, then it was like, oh my God, this is just the best thing in the world.
So you say there's no data, no nothing. They're literally doing your lap times on a stopwatch. And you said it took a lot of grinding and hard work to get to the front because it was so competitive. How did you go about that? Because nowadays we obviously have the sim and data and whatever, and we can analyze things to death, almost too much. Yeah. What did you do?
Well, just exactly what I've just said. Most important thing was your rev counter. And that becomes less, the faster, like Rich's at Snetterton, that'd be 4th gear, and the thing would hardly ever move. So it's quite difficult to gauge from there. You obviously racing, when you're around other cars as well, you'd pick up what you needed to do. I did get some good advice from a guy called Richard Morgan he'd won the festival, I think 10 years earlier than that. Very good driver. He sort of mentored me for it. But of course, you couldn't really tell. You could get people standing on corners giving you advice on what you were doing, but there wasn't anything more definitive than that. You just had to build a feel for what was quick and what wasn't.
Mm. And during this time, you won your first race.
Mm-hmm.
Did you think, okay, I can become a professional at this? Did you aim, okay, I can make Formula One?
Well, my only aim was to get into Formula One, so it was just part of the journey. I wasn't going motor racing just to take part.
Mm.
It was, you talked about I wasn't particularly intelligent, failing my common entrance. Did you pass yours then, Gus?
I did.
Oh, dear. Okay. But I didn't do very well.
I haven't been to public schools. I don't even know what that exam is. Know what that exam is.
It's not the quality. It's not the level of your education. It's the quality of the private school that you went to that's important, isn't it?
Cheers.
I didn't do particularly well at school, and my son has sort of quite profound ADHD, and I didn't. I think I had that. You know, when my son was being diagnosed, I was thinking, this sounds like me. And so concentration, etc., was a problem. And anyway, what do I need an education for? Because I'm going to be a racing driver. It was exactly what I thought. You know, everyone else, you can go and get your O levels and whatever and feel good about it. But I'm going to be a racing driver one day and I'm going to be famous. Is what I genuinely thought. So I wasn't in it to play. I only wanted to have a career in motorsport.
And then what was the next step after Formula Ford? Because you ended up in the equivalent of Formula 3?
No, from Formula Ford 1600, it was then Formula Ford 2000. So what would that be like? Formula Renault, something like that.
Something like
that. In Formula Ford, I was lucky in our day that there were manufacturers who were building cars. So they always needed quick drivers to win in their cars. So when I was in Formula Ford, I drove first of all for Lolas and then for Reynards. And then after that, then when I moved on from Formula Ford, I drove for Van Diemen's, who were the biggest car manufacturer in those days. I think they built something like 150 racing cars a year.
And back in that day, they were paying you to drive for them.
£100 a week.
Yeah, but now you're paying like $2,000 a week.
Yeah, well,
more.
The most important thing was free driving. And we literally were out all of the time. I think I've said to bored Jordan with this many times, but when I drove for Van Diemen's, their factory was at Snetterton. And in 1 year alone, I did 72 tests at Snetterton alone with 2 cars. And once we tested for 7 days straight, so we go over the weekend, and in the summer we would test until 9 o'clock at night. And there would be no one there.
Well, tell us about when you had a bit of an incident and you were left.
Yeah, so I'm testing there at night, and there was only myself and Mickey Galton, my mechanic. Great mechanic, Mickey. And I think something failed on the rear of the car, on the back straight, you know, where the bridge is now. And there used to be a bank on the inside. And so I think it was a rear right fail. So I turned left this is flat out, into the bank on the left. The car then came off it and rolled. And I'm left on my side. Not completely upside down, but I couldn't get out of the car. And I could sort of smell petrol. And I'm thinking, oh my God. And I'm a bit claustrophobic anyway. And so there's no marshals. There's Mickey with the truck. And so he obviously heard that I'd gone off. And so he had to put the ramps up, fold the ramps up, get in the truck, and then drive around in the truck and get me out. But that felt, I don't know how long I was there, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. That really scared me.
Yeah, I bet.
That really scared me, and I did wonder, why am I doing this?
And that was at a time where people actually died. Like your era trying to get to F1, was there also no fear? Because now it's so much safer. Racing all the way up, whether it's F4, I mean, yes, stuff still happens. But Formula 4, Formula 3, Formula 2, and GT cars, I would argue, much safer, even so, more than single-seater racing. But was that never a fear for you? Because at the time you're racing, Formula 1 drivers, Formula 2 drivers, or the equivalent of Formula 2 and Formula 3 drivers, they're all passing away, losing legs. You know, was that never a fear that came into your mind?
Oh, I definitely, I didn't want to die. But I found it was an advantage I found the tracks were much more dangerous in those days.
Yeah.
The cars probably weren't as safe. Well, probably definitely weren't as safe. But the tracks were much more dangerous. And that was I wouldn't like to race now because there's no premium on intensity, effort, desire. Whereas in my day, if you really wanted it, you could have an advantage. You know, especially like brands, GP, things like that, tracks like that. You definitely had an advantage, and that played to my strengths. So, I don't think I'd like to race now. Racing is much more technical now.
Yeah.
Whereas I felt in my day that if the chips were down, if testing hadn't gone well or whatever, you could actually wring the neck of the car and you could get a time out of it.
Just with courage.
Yeah, and overdrive. The car would benefit from a bit of overdriving.
Okay.
Whereas now, not so much.
And what is overdriving for people that might not know what that means?
Overdriving is if that's the limit and you're operating down here, it is the effort required to close that. It is effectively where there's a skill gap.
Right.
Yeah. How you close that skill gap down, and but you can close some of it by trying harder. By overdriving is driving beyond your skill level at that moment.
Got you. And talking to people here, you've been very successful in Formula Ford, winning races, but also I've heard that you've had some races where you haven't finished. Is the overdriving you're talking about there come into play?
Yeah, I think so. I think I always pushed beyond where I'm a little bit too far.
Okay.
And if you're doing that, then you're gonna have crashes.
Yeah.
So it would be either as it'd always be very good in qualifying, things like that. Didn't always make great starts. And in those days, anyway, it was really close. You get good toes, so the racing was close. And I would just be too desperate. Too desperate, and after a while, that will piss people off that you're driving for.
Recently, John's been sent a video of his Formula Ford race in 1984
To the festival.
for the Formula Ford Festival, which
I've
is
seen
like where all the top dogs. I mean, I'm sure there'll be some. I'll ask you this in a second about some drivers you've raced against if we know any of their names, but. He's watching it, and you're watching it as if like I'm watching my race back now, and he's like, I've caught him. Not just once going through it with the lads, but walking in when he's on his own, just watching, going, why didn't I win that race? Why didn't I win that race?
And now John Pratt taking a look at the inside line. Buzzard just that little bit wide. Pratt going through on the inside, almost collecting Buzzard and spins off. Oh, and John Pratt will be furious with himself. And he's spinning away on the grass. He has to wait till the whole field has gone.
Oh, I spun off, didn't I?
You crashed because you tried to go for the lead, right?
Yeah, stupidly. I won my heat, I held a lap record there from the previous year. So it's a track I was really good at. And so I won my heat, won my quarterfinal. Come the semi-final, I was on pole, made a bad start. And I knew that the guy had won the previous semi-final because they went by race time for who would be on pole for the final. And this other guy, Gerrit van Kouwen, he had a really quick race, so I knew I had to really go for it. And my car wasn't I wasn't quick that year, or quick enough, I didn't think, to win. So my plan is I've got to be on pole, got to get a good start, and then make life difficult for Gerrit. But so this other driver, Alvaro, beside, he made a better start than me. And I followed him for a lap, and he was not driving particularly well, and this had been causing me to panic a bit. And I just decided this is where I would go wrong. I just decided at Clearways, no matter what, I'm going through. Because sometimes in races you have to make that decision.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Otherwise
you
you just
have
end
to,
up following.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
just made the decision I'm going through there no matter what. Well, I think I nearly did.
You could have done it.
I could have done it, but I unfortunately caught too much curb and spun. And then in my haste to get back on, I spun again on the grass.
Ooh.
And something like that still hurts now.
That really, although I don't like to look back, you do look back. And I look back on a number of things that could have been a lot better. And that was incredibly disappointing.
Surely, though, you have to go. It's better to go for it in a race car than not to. Sure, because as
Yeah,
in, if you're
think so.
always holding back,
Yeah.
you'll never know, will you?
Yeah, I was popular from my style of driving was always popular.
Sold some tickets.
Well, I don't know about selling tickets in those days, but it enabled. I was sponsored by BP and a company, a charity called Racing for Britain in those days, where people put money in and then they'd give it to drivers that they chose. So at one level, it really my style of driving really supported me, but ultimately, in terms of being able to get to Formula One, there were flaws in my personality that sort of dictated that wasn't going to happen.
So I think you slightly answered the question, but why then didn't you make Formula One, in your opinion? Why did racing stop for you?
Well, not very good at finding money. I'd always been lucky because, like, for 4 years, I would drive for manufacturers. And so I was a bit arrogant and lazy. That's why I watch out for our guys. I see here, if I see character flaws that are mine in drivers, that's even more important. And I'm really less tolerant of those sort of things because I know how much damage it can cause. But I think it was a combination of poor concentration, poor decision making, etc. I think I was reasonably fast, but that's not it. That's not everything.
I asked you this question because Andy Priaulx, who then went on to work with in the future after your racing career, I spoke to him, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago at the Silverstone Grand Prix at the BRDC. And maybe he'd had a couple of drinks, that's why he said this. But he said you were one of the most naturally talented driver he's ever seen or raced with. Did you race with Priaulx?
No.
Someone said that to me. Priaulx said that you were one of the most naturally talented drivers he's seen, and someone else has also said to me that basically, like, you should have made it.
Yeah.
So, what was there like a defining moment? And did you think you had that natural talent? Was there a defining moment where it ended and you felt like a victim, or was it you knew it was your fault?
No, I've never been a victim over it. All the time when I was quick, I remember when I was in Formula Ford, I held the lap record at every track we raced.
That's
and
impressive.
I don't think that had ever been done before in the Reynard. And even then, I would always question, am I, because I raced against a guy called Dave Coyne, and he was very good. I don't know if Dave will ever see this, but I don't think Dave was quite as quick as me, but he was clever. Clever. Not as desperate as me. And that was the racing against Dave made me realize that I thought, there's some sort of things that are not as good as they could be.
When you say clever, is this the decision making in
racecraft? Yeah, he would always be there. Whereas I think I said it before, I'd always be a bit desperate. It meant too much, and maybe I felt a little bit too insecure. As I was just saying, am I really doing this well? Even when I appeared to be to other people, but to myself, I would always be questioning myself. Questioning myself.
That almost fueled the desperate moves. Is that almost
think so.
Insecurity of like, am I quite?
Yeah, because I go back to that's why I think it's very important when you're working with drivers. You've got to know a lot about their history, and being not very clever at school puts a very deep insecurity into you, and I think that fueled really good stuff, but it also, I didn't have the balance in it.
Do you regret anything looking back? Do you think you could have made it had you changed something realistically? Not if you could just go back and be Ayrton Senna.
No. I think I'm very happy to have had the chances that I had, and so I carry very good memories of motorsport. Bear in mind, I was up in those days racing against lots of really good drivers who you would never have heard of. And I was always very aware of the people around me, especially when I started. There were some very, very good drivers who never made anything, It was even difficult in those days. I can remember very good. I used to race against Anthony Reid. So we started out in Formula Ford the same time. I don't think Anthony ever won a Formula Ford race when he was doing Formula Ford. And he went on to having the most incredible career. And probably the fastest, most dangerous driver I've ever been around, Anthony, but he never won a race in Formula Ford.
So why do you think he went on to make a more successful career out of motorsport?
Well, I don't think he ever was in a particularly good drive in Formula Ford, and I think it's just circumstance a little bit. You know, the works teams always had an advantage. He didn't get into a works car. So, but I'm just, that's how, you know, there will be lots of drivers that back when I first started that were really, really good, and I really looked up to, who just no one would know of now, and never made anything at all.
Yeah. Obviously, this racing stopped at some point, but you stayed involved in racing, and we'd like to talk more on Andy Priaulx and how that relationship came about. And anyone that's listening, if you're in motorsport and you don't know who Andy Priaulx is, you need to educate yourself. He's one of the best British drivers the country obviously has produced, 3 times World Touring Car Champion, and you worked with Andy from the start. And he went from pretty much living in a caravan at Silverstone to these 3 world championships. When did your relationship start into that
I think
journey?
our relationship started in '97.
And where was Andy at that point?
He had originally been British hill climb champion in those big 500 horsepower, very dangerous cars. And he then transitioned from there into Formula Renault. And obviously it's a completely different discipline. And he was really struggling. He was working at Silverstone, the racing school here, and I used to train the instructors here. And we sort of bumped into each other, and I remember just one day chatting, and he was telling me the problems he was having, and I said, maybe I can help you with that. So went to test with him, worked on a few things, and that seemed to work, and we sort of built our relationship from there.
Okay. And I was going to say, sorry, I thought you were about to say something. And what were you, how many years were you coaching at this point? For a number of years, or
when I was driving in the 80s, then I would be working at Silverstone, Jim Russell School and place. So instructing, I think, is, I wouldn't call it coaching.
Got you.
And then after I finished driving, I went into business, but I ran various businesses. But I always kept my hand in. I love the sport. And so that's what dragged me back to Silverstone, part-time working there. That was, as I said, that was started when I worked with Andy. If you ask me why, if I look back and think, why did I fail? You only got to look at someone like Andy. He is probably one of the more remarkable people I've met in my life in terms of his ability under pressure to make things happen. And when I first started working with him, he was working at Silverstone, living in his caravan. That's absolutely a true story. And I remember he would be working on sponsorship from 7:30 in the morning till 10 at night. And when I used to have an office in my garden, and we would be there from like 6:30, if there's a race weekend coming up, from 6:30 till 10, 11 o'clock at night, just going through every detail possible to leave no stone unturned. I think the thing was, when I drove, I would not leave. I really studied my sport. And I think I was lucky because I learned meditation when I was 22. Silva met SILVA after a guy called Jose Silva, an American system. And it makes you very intuitive. And I think it made me good at looking, not what the problem is, how do you get behind that? And, we talk here about, drivers being told you're braking too early. Well, I'm interested in why, not just telling someone to brake later. What's causing that? Andy's very similar to me. We were very similar, and both quite challenging personalities in that respect. So working with Andy, that really developed me further as well. Even though I was coaching Andy, I would learn a great deal from doing that. And in the first year we fully worked together, he won the Renault Spider Championship, which was like a Renault sports car, 2-seater sports car, and he won every race. I think he was on pole for every race, and I think he had fastest lap for all but one race, and totally dominated that year. And that was just because I treated it just like I was racing myself. And Andy just motivated me. He was just like going motor racing again for me, but really just as a coach stroke, and I'd engineer the car for him as well.
Oh, right, okay.
So it was utterly fascinating.
I was going to ask you that. So with Andy, did you feel a bit like you were sort of, because Andy's a bit younger than you, isn't he?
Must be 15 years.
He's 51 now.
Yeah. So did he feel like you were
14.
kind of coaching yourself in a way, as if you could kind of do it again with Andy?
Yeah, it was an opportunity. Well, it was an opportunity to operate at a really high level,
Yeah.
where things really mattered.
And what did he have that others lack?
I think his ability to perform under pressure, and he certainly in terms of finding money, he couldn't have gone motor racing without. He had to have some help from his family, but his ability to grind out the things that we don't like doing, I certainly couldn't. I didn't like finding sponsorship. That ability to do that, but then to never give up, never say die. The most determined person I think I've ever met. And so, if your house depended on it, in qualifying, you'd put Andy in the car. He was like, sometimes Andy, it had to be, if it wasn't bad enough, it wouldn't get the very most out of him. If he felt that in some way he'd been messed around or slighted, or he was at a disadvantage, he was at his most dangerous. And I think that's an immensely powerful thing.
Would you say this is from his goals being so powerful that he will do whatever it takes?
I think he was somebody else who struggled at school. Andy had real struggles at school. And so there was that sort of identity, challenges that I had, and confidence challenges. And so it was really, really important to him as well.
Do you think there was a fear, and you've told me this as well, I think before, do you think there was fear of failure, fear of being a loser, and fear of it not working out, that it had to work, otherwise you had nothing? Yeah.
And then before he made it, he had a child on the way, Seb, who's now doing really well. He had so he always said to me, I'm going racing, for my family.
And just a last thing on Andy, we'll get into a bit more on the driver performance questions in a little while, but talk a little bit about the detail you would go through after a race weekend, because we have some listeners and subscribers that do sim racing or have the privilege of driving in reality as well. After a race weekend, when you sit down together, give us an idea of that level of detail you would go through.
Well, I can give you one example. When we were in that year in Spiders, we went testing, and at Brands Hatch, and Andy was like 4/10 off, and Jake Hill's dad, Simon Hill, was quickest on the day, and that was like really serious. And I don't believe that things don't just come right by luck. And also, you've got to kid your unconscious mind that you've done something to make a difference. So we made a list. I think we had 2 weeks, and we made a list of 20 things that we both absolutely thought that can make a difference. Yeah, might not be a 10th each, it might be 100th here, half a 10th here, whatever. And one of them was to get more laps around Brands Indy, because Andy didn't know Brands Indy very well. And I knew Tim Jones, who ran the racing school. We used to race against each other. And I wangled it so that he took Andy on as an instructor.
Really?
And as an instructor on, and coincidentally, the next week, Andy actually only did one day, because that's all we wanted. And I managed to get him on hot laps on that day.
For more track time.
So he had more track time. And Simon Hill was there, obviously a regular instructor there, and he was not happy.
No, I got in his head.
So that is, how can we manipulate situations where we have some influence or control? So that was one of the 20 things that we did. Got him more track time.
Got you. Because it's looking at the marginal gains. You mentioned 20 separate items you look at most people, after they do a lap or a session, they look at maybe a few things.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at 20 things to improve on.
Yeah,
Tiny things.
Normally, that that would be way too much, but we came up with 20 things that we thought would make a difference.
Would it be, I say silly things, but things that people wouldn't think about, i.e., getting an excess of sleep? Or
well, I think that was one of them.
Yeah,
that was one because Andy was always worn out, and so having an excess of sleep before the weekend really, really important. You can't hold intensity at a high level if your energy is low.
The F1 drivers take sleep very, very seriously, or any high-level performing athlete. They take pillows with them.
Sleep coaches.
Sleep coaches,
Yeah.
And they take pillows abroad with them.
I got that from Nicky Lauda's book on Formula One that I read in 1977, I think.
Oh, yeah, charging your sleep in the week of the race if you have a bad night's sleep.
Because then it doesn't matter if you don't sleep on the Friday night, if you're nervous, whatever, because you've got a bank of sleep already there.
I think the last thing about Priaulx before we come on to iZone, where we're sat right now. Why do you think? Because I think Andy's absolute goal in his head was Formula One, right?
Mm-hmm.
He ended up, did he not, as a test driver
for Williams?
Williams. Why did he then not make it? Do you think was it just lack of seats available, lack of funding, or was it talent?
I don't really know. I just think sometimes, there's an element of luck involved, being in the right place at the right time. I can't really answer that question, mate. That would be something you'd have to ask Andy, I think.
Well, we've got him on later, so not later.
Yeah,
today.
we're in touch, yeah.
There you go.
But yeah, okay. So then after your stint sort of coaching Andy and all your racing career, you then decide to set up what was APSM, Andy Priaulx Sports Management, no?
No, that was later.
So it was iZone.
So iZone started up 15 years ago.
Okay, which is explain what iZone is.
Okay, well, for how I got there is obviously I've been in business, and I'd always thought for years that there's a centre to, having started at Jim Russell School, there's no modern version of that to support drivers. Then simulation comes along. And so that's a way of accessing it. And so once I sold my business or got it out of my business, I was then able to set this place up. Initially, really just as a hobby. Really, it's something I really wanted to do and indulging myself. So it was really the advent of simulation that then, because otherwise you'd have to go coaching at the track and I'd really had enough of doing that. I don't enjoy that. And this now, you can real-time coach somebody much better than you can at the track. Nowadays, I think we're all clear guys. Both you guys do a lot of simulation. The correlation in terms of technique in the simulator is pretty direct. Obviously, you don't have the fear factor, which is important. But in terms of technique, etc., mindset, there's a very good correlation.
Yeah, it's one of very, very few sports where you can have simulation, use the same techniques as reality. The only other industry I see is flight simulation.
Yeah,
it's the same. So, I mean, John's not going to say this, but iZone is one of Europe's leading driver coaching facilities where we are. That's when I came here for the first time. I immediately sensed the quality of this place. And even for driving for 10 years, obviously I worked here for 7 years, but 95% of what I know about racing is from this place.
Likewise.
And so it's very much a core part of our technique. But we'll get on to, you've seen the various amount of drivers, so many from going to Formula One to Le Mans, etc., maybe just karting and then do something else. How does someone typically train as a racing driver in yours? If they're wanting to get into racing or they have a job, they're very lucky to drive in reality. What's a typical training structure a driver should be doing if they want to make it?
Well, I think the first thing is you'd need to get a bit of advice to find out what you're doing well, because you might not be aware of that, and what are the areas that you need to work on? Because, oops, that's our resident dog.
Yeah.
So that then, when you are training, you're spending most of your time on the areas of biggest return. And I think that's the starting point. Then, obviously, really important nowadays to have your own simulator. You know, that's just like, oh my God, if we could have had one of those when I was, well, I don't know whether it would have given, you know, everyone, it's really leveled the field.
Yeah, it has.
I feel like, you know, going back to when I raced, there was an advantage for people who could work it out.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if I would be very keen on having simulation when I was doing it. So that allows you to build miles for free. And then the most important thing is to put structure into your training. Most drivers will hop on their sim and they'll go round and round and round, just trying to go faster. And what'll happen is they'll then get into that routine that everyone does. If they make a mistake in turn one, then that lap is of no interest to them anymore. All they want to do is get round and start the next lap. So effectively, they're learning to train at a low level of intensity because the rest of that lap is wasted. That's not, that's not productive training. And so for us here, running consistency drills, and here you'll do a run of 8 laps. Our spreadsheets then work out what was your slowest lap from that run, and that becomes your target time for the next one. And the idea is to keep, as long as everything's on target, you get another target time. And the idea is to eliminate the bad laps rather than chasing the good, because the good laps will come.
Yeah.
You eliminate the bad laps. And then after each run, as we do here, we analyze, what did we do well? Yeah, what could have been better? So that we're building all the time our self-knowledge, developing our noting, understanding our skills, etc., etc. So to me, that's very basic training that everyone can do. But it's very, very different to 95% of what drivers will do.
What would you say to someone, and we've definitely, me and you have seen it here at iZone, to someone that, a driver that comes to iZone and tries it out and says, and they're trying to make this F1 goal possible, and they say, I don't like the sim's not for me, it doesn't feel exactly like the real car. What would you say?
Well, I would say what we talked about earlier, that it's not going to be perfect, but the skills are exactly the same. The pressure you're going to be under might not be to the same level, but it's still going to be to have to perform, especially with the drills that we run here. Especially, once you've done your consistency drills, you've got your qualifying on your race runs, your adaptability. We've got, they gradually leverage more and more pressure on I think the thing, the operating of the steering and the pedals and the steering, brake and the throttle are the only controls that we have. And I think drivers, after a while, anyone can master that. Yeah, it's not particularly complicated. I started boxing 3 years ago, and that is altogether the most complicated thing I've ever done in terms of skill. So I think in terms of skill, most drivers can pick that up. It is knowing your performance state. We talked about underdriving and overdriving earlier on. Knowing how to set your mind into pure, Andy would call it pure focus, so that you can then deliver all of your skill without it being filtered by the thinking mind. That is something we can learn really, really well in the simulator. Because, most of our drivers will come here, don't ever really practice qualifying racing in the right way. And, what do we do? Maybe qualify 8 times a year, something like that. Here, our drivers qualify 5 days a week. And, it's those things that I think are really, really important. How you perform on match points. I look at tennis as in terms of that's bulk pressure.
Yeah.
And I don't know, is there much difference between 100th in the world and number 1? I think it probably comes much more down to the mind. And I find that the fascination. That's why everyone here, we study mindfulness and meditation.
And that pressure, is that what you believe separates the good versus world-class drivers?
Yeah, that ability to perform at that level. I think there's one other thing that it's your default level of intensity and desire. I think that's a big variable, and some drivers are very happy constantly being on the edge. We have a self-preservation instinct that makes it an unusual thing for people to want to go and tweak the tail of the tiger. I remember once when I was in Formula 4 2000 testing at Brands, and for some reason I was really on it that day, and in a different state. I remember going through paddock, and it felt so fast that if I had made a mistake there, I wouldn't just spin, I would have a major crash. It felt so very, very different. I remember afterwards thinking, I wonder if that's what it's like for Senna. And that is his default state. And so, there's I don't know, it's a black art in the end. There's a sort of a mystery to, how do you end up with all the people that go motor racing? And there's like Verstappen, Hamilton, the Schumacher, Senna, Prost, those guys that were a level above. What is it? Verstappen, he's probably half a second quicker than any of his teammates, isn't he? Where does that come from? To find a 10th is really difficult. How do Djokovic and Federer and Nadal, with the millions of people that play tennis, totally, much more competitive than motorsport, how do they get to the point where they dominated the sport?
I think it's super interesting, but all of the people that you've just mentioned, you've Verstappen, Djokovic, Sinner in tennis. Verstappen's a great example. Priaulx. Whenever I've met these people or see these people, they are the most intense. You can just see it when they're in an interview or when they're walking around. Piastri, I think, similar-ish as well. Norris, not so much. Where they've just got this... When you meet someone like Andy, you can tell they're so competitive, they're so driven. And I think that is the only difference between, say you could have two Andys, but one's really laid back and not that competitive. They've got the same skill set, but one will never give up and will just
dominate.
Yeah.
It's the want to win, isn't it? If you see it with Lewis as well, when he was winning more often, when there was any chance of winning, you could always sense the level he would have to, like how much he would go deep with, that want to win. Just dig deeper and deeper and deeper. You can visibly see it as an energy for sure that these greats have. So you saw that in it's another level. And I, as I said, on that day, I just thought, oh my God, that's opened another window to me on what's possible. And after that, everything was a bit of a disappointment.
So what's the owning a training facility? And I know that you also really care about the drivers, like especially when you believe in them and you believe they've got potential. What's the most frustrating thing you see in drivers? And you're not allowed to say me. What's the most frustrating thing?
Present company excluded.
Yeah. What's the most frustrating thing you see in a talented young driver? What's one of the most frustrating traits they have or mistakes they make when they come to you at iZone to train?
I think I can expand on that a little bit. I think one of the challenges that modern drivers have, the challenges of the drivers we have here, we don't deal with many people who aren't sons and daughters of high net worth individuals. And with that comes a safety net and a very comfortable life. And they've been brought up by parents who look out, they've probably been to private school. They've always been looked after and probably spoilt because dad's really busy. So dad buys them stuff to, look after them and make sure they're there. So they don't have, I always say to our drivers, generally when they start, when we're talking about this, and I always say that what if you have a twin that you lost contact with when you were born, and you had your upbringing, but your twin with the same skill, let's just say they had the same exact skills as you technically, but they were brought up in the East End of London, working their way through boxing clubs, under pressure. Who's going to win? So some of this is outside the control of our drivers. So it's my job to sort of show the mirror to them.
You need to put them all in like some kind of dodgy boot camp.
Mate, well,
I would love
you
to.
should
I would
do that.
love
It's a
to.
boxing club.
I would love to
pay
have that.
someone to
We don't
mug
have
them.
that facility. Sorry,
I said just pay someone to mug them or something.
yeah, tougher than that.
but I think they'd need to go away for a month. Our drivers over the winter to the most miserable experience they've ever had of their lives, with ex-special forces or something like that.
Yeah.
Where they really appreciate everything that they have. I don't think it's very easy to influence that. So going back to your question, what is the most disappointing thing that I see? It is poor organisation, not caring. Sorry, Gus.
I've been told.
Not caring enough about this jewel of a sport that we have, and taking that seriously, taking that opportunity. And I think the sad thing as well, that they don't really know what they need to do to succeed. You know, I take the template of Andy. You know, I don't really see that. Don't see it very often. We have obviously some drivers operating at a very high level, and do work really, really. I think it's that whole thing, isn't it? They say that 2% of people in the world will be successful. Human nature. We've survived as long as we have through human evolution, through not putting ourselves at risk, not putting ourselves out there. Otherwise, we wouldn't have survived. And so that's innate in us. So it's unusual for people to really want to do something. But I think, you know, where's it coming? Does it come from an insecurity, from not being good at... Where, you know, all of these things are... you know, there's lots of different reasons behind it.
So do you find it, sorry Gus,
All right.
do you also find it frustrating when someone has a level of skill or ability that they're not working so hard? Does that become more frustrating as well?
Not really, because that's the path that they're on at that moment. I can't really, if they don't have that inner desire to be better, I can't create that. And it's not my job to interfere with somebody's personal journey that they're on. I can hold the mirror.
Yeah.
I can look disappointed. We can have conversations over it, but ultimately it's over to them.
Yeah.
Whether they're at that point. Enzo Mucci, who I know you've had on here. Enzo and I go back a long way. And he always said, people won't change until it becomes painful enough. Change is related to pain.
That's true, 100%. I think you said earlier about understanding what it takes to be successful in something, which makes sense that kids from a very privileged background don't quite have, and they don't quite understand because they've just grown up with privilege and with nice things, and things just kind of happen to them and they don't really have to work for it. I'm not speaking for everyone, but most of the time that's the case. Verstappen is the perfect example of a dad. Either way you look at it, whether you like it or not, he's from a privileged background, but his dad, and Verstappen has said this himself, he said he made sure from the youngest age possible that he knew what it takes to be the top, the best of the best in his sport. And you can see that, like Max, he has this intensity where some drivers, a lot of drivers, I mean, even maybe sometimes me, you know, you finish, I mean, me to an extent, I guess, sometimes you finish second or you third and you think, oh, that's all right. Not with Max. You know, Max finished second once to Perez at Baku, I believe, in 2022
That's
or 2023. Right. And he said he was fuming afterwards, and he was just like, I'm never, ever letting that happen again. But it must annoy you to see, and it must annoy so many of our viewers watching as well, who are desperate to get in a race car.
Yeah, and people not making use.
And I've seen it a lot here as well, and they've come and gone, where you see drivers from a privileged background, or maybe they've got a dad with a big name, or a brother with a big name, or whatever it is, and they've got this arrogance about them, and they're not that good, but they could be, you know, if they had the privilege. And then there's kids queuing up, doing thousands of laps a day on the sim, desperate to get a sponsor, desperate to get in a race car, and then there's kids throwing it away.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think I used to get frustrated, but
At peace.
But everyone isn't. Well, I don't think I'm happy. I'm not happy. Some people think I'm quite grumpy, but I'm very much resigned now to people are on their path, and we can help as much as we can. I find it very motivating, actually. I'm not so interested in necessarily the quality of the driver. I enjoy working with drivers where you can really see them working and developing. Whether they're ever going to make it or not, because I feel there is real intrinsic value. If you go about any sport in the right way, you learn so much about yourself, so much about your capabilities. You learn how to deal, with defeat.
Yeah.
You learn how to manage mistakes. You learn how to manage pressure, and you this whole thing. You learn your strengths and you manage your weaknesses. That then is a life lesson that you can take. You can become successful. You're in the process of becoming an entrepreneur, Jordan, now, and you're taking in the same skills as you would have used in motorsport to be successful.
Yeah.
So I don't see this as a loss.
I think
when the career comes to an end, I was lucky that when I started, I went into business, but with the same attitude. The same attention to what I was doing.
John, on this topic of hard work, right, in someone's journey, do you believe in what's called as natural talent for a driver?
I think that some people, I think it's more down to, maybe there is something. I don't tend to work to that. I think it's more like some people don't think so much about what they're doing. Generally, when we start out, we get in our way. We overcomplicate. We overthink. We take our skills that we had at school, where we try really hard, and we become successful as a result of that. If you have that sort of mindset, you will overthink something that needs to be very, very natural. If you don't think so much about things, then things will come to you much more easily.
Yeah.
So I think that's more of what's at play there. And, I think the most difficult people I work with here are people that you could say are like that. The people who have that little bit of, it's a little bit easier to start with for them because they don't build grit and determination.
Yeah. Because
they eventually get caught by the hard workers.
I'm on the fence with if this natural talent actually exists. I know, obviously, if you take a Usain Bolt, obviously it's a talent.
But that's a different thing.
That's a physical.
Yeah.
That's
we
a physical,
don't have that as racing
No,
drivers.
in racing,
we're a
it's
skill
set.
sport.
Exactly. So when I see someone say Max Verstappen is so talented or Lewis Hamilton is so talented, I think, well, hang on a sec. Since they were 4 years old, they have been completely obsessed of racing with dads that have pushed them to their limits.
Yeah.
And all they care about is winning and having that perfectionist sort of mindset. So I think, are they talented or are they just obsessed with the game? I
think they might be
Michael
more
Jordan.
naturally competitive.
Yeah.
And naturally more determined. Maybe their insecurities are stronger. Max Verstappen is a product of his dad's insecurities. Maybe.
Yeah.
It's very, very complicated.
Yes.
And, I think mental strength is the defining factor.
Yeah.
And the most difficult skill to achieve.
Can that be trained?
Yeah. That's why we train mindfulness every day.
How important for you is mindfulness, visualization? Let's say if you were to pick one or the other, if you were to start your racing career now and have to pick between simulator training and running intense drills, etc., and you're not allowed to do any mental stuff, or just doing mental stuff and no sim, which would you pick? Which is more important?
Oh, can I have something in the middle?
No.
I think I'd do the sim stuff because I'd pick up on it afterwards. If you do your sim stuff right, you will be mentally stretched if you do the right drills. But I always say to the guys, if I could have my time again, I would absolutely work on my vision and become a master at that.
Can you
under
explain,
any pressure?
Like, so many, even drivers I've coached that are at quite a high level already, lots of people don't know what you're talking about when you say vision training.
Okay.
Can you explain what vision is?
Let's call it judgment training is another way of looking at it. Obviously, we have technical, mental, and physical, and we have judgment. So the technical side is, as I said, we've got a brake, throttle, and a steering wheel, and how we use that. Yep. And there's a certain way, depending on the corner, single split, depending on the car, big hit, followed by, as we turn into the corner, eventually, we pick up what the rate, and we're bleeding off the brake at a certain rate to achieve that, and then we're picking up the throttle in a certain way, depending on the car we're driving. So I call that technique. But what vision gives us is knowing what's coming up in plenty of time for our brain to have time to calculate exactly when to do it. Perfect example is when we drive at night on the difference between being on a full beam and on a country road and a dip beam. We naturally drive faster when we're on a full beam because we see more, we see everything further ahead, we feel safer, we have more time to calculate what's coming up, than giving our best result to that, rather than being reactive, which we are when we just see things at the last moment. Okay? So vision is knowing exactly where your precise apex is as you approach a corner. And then once we turned into the corner, looking up to see the exit and to then judge rather than guess. The opposite of good vision is guesswork. We just learn our way round. Vision is more driving like a rally driver. It's very, very natural. Rally driver does not repeat in the same way that we do. They can't work to a braking marker or a turning in marker. Everything is judged. And they couldn't do that blindfold. Mm-hmm. So your judgment comes from your vision combined with your memory of what you've done before. Yep. That then, so where I'm about to go and I've got to get to, combined with, your knowledge of having done it previously, what's right and what's wrong, that information then goes into, let's just say we have a computer on board, our computer, let's call it our autopilot. It combines that information and it is then processed by our software. Yeah. Our built up method of driving, and then the output comes out through the steering wheel and the pedals. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We can't just work off memory. You have to have real time information, which is your vision.
And you have an incredible example of this with Kevin Magnussen, who you trained. Yeah. And we can overlay this footage, but it shocked me the first time I saw it. And it's at Silverstone, I think in a Renault 3.5. Formula 2 car.
The eye tracking.
And he is looking, I think he's showing off a bit because he is looking so far ahead.
I don't, we better have a disclaimer on the bottom of it. I think it's a little bit too far. But what was extraordinary about he was an extraordinary driver, actually. He was an extraordinary driver because his vision when I tracked him was very low to start with. And he corrected to that video within 5 or 6 laps. That's extraordinary.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's where
he said, I said, I'll laser you. He said, no, let me try and do it on my own.
That was on his own.
Because we use a laser pen to point at our screen to show drivers where they should be looking.
Why do you think that is with Kevin? Why do you think he picked it up so quickly? Having never heard about vision and vision training, and you just told him to do something, he just did it.
He's one of those people that things come a little bit easier to.
Fast learning.
I've remembered what I was going to say earlier, but it's kind of a bit off topic now. You were talking about... I was talking about, people saying, what if with racing, and how you were saying how, racing and working in motorsport or any sport, if you do it right, prepares you so well for life.
Yep.
And as I was saying earlier, my friends have said to me, oh, but you haven't gone to uni, you haven't got a degree, and you haven't got this work experience. But I would argue that in some ways, I'm matured much quicker than a lot of my friends. And there's no way that any of them have the same ability that I do to self-analyze myself every day and be really honest with myself. Whenever I speak to anyone outside of racing or outside of a world-class sport, and they haven't, ever participated in something really competitive where you've really got to grit your teeth and really look at yourself and, like you said, hold up the mirror to yourself, I see such an inability to self-analyze and they're so quick to excuse themselves of things. Like, I'm not perfect by any means, you know that, but I also admit that I'm not perfect, and I know exactly why. And racing's given me that, and I think if I could go into quite a few jobs now with the skill set I have, looking for sponsorships. Racing is a business in itself as well. So you're looking for sponsors. You're constantly, from a young age, your engineer's 50, 40, 30, your mechanics are older, you're maturing very quickly, you're constantly self-analysing. John's always very straight talking with me, and you. So me and Jordan now have this ability with the podcast or whatever it is to just be quite straight talking with each other. That wasn't good, that was. And I mean, I've even had it today with a driver that I was coaching that they didn't like my approach to the analysis I gave them. Because they take it as an attack. I go, that wasn't very good, and I mean that in the best way possible when I'm talking to someone. If they want to do well, I go, this was good, that wasn't. Fix that, and you'll be quicker. Yeah. And if they don't do it at all and don't even try, and they come in, I look at the video and I go, why haven't you done it? Yeah. Why haven't you even tried? I would rather you have tried and spun off. Do you know what I mean? But I think that sport in general, my point was, really prepares you well for business and for life. Yeah. And my God, for overcoming lows and highs. Because no one, I don't think, in the normal world, okay, there's obviously family stuff and external factors that you can't control, but within a competitive and business environment, no one from the age of sort of 10 to 20 goes through the peaks and troughs that you do in motorsport emotionally, and having to deal with them and having to try and pick yourself up. And it's a lonely sport as well. You spend a lot of time with yourself and to learn about yourself. And
don't have the support of your teammates.
No.
True.
And a lot of people come over from America or from wherever it is in the world and race in Europe. That's a problem that we didn't have to deal with. But someone like Kush, for example, Kush Miney, who we've had on the podcast, came over from India. Could he barely speak English?
No, all posh Indians only speak English.
No, okay, so he's posh Indian. He moved to Italy.
Yeah,
straight away at 15, 14?
He learned
and
Italian there,
even younger than
but
that.
he knew nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. And he moved straight to Italy to do F4 for Italian F4. And ever since, he's basically, not that he's not gone home, but he...
No, he was over here for karting, so he's here much younger. Much younger.
You mentioned teammates. Yeah, it's a weird dynamic we have in racing, isn't it? Do you believe you can actually be friends with your teammate? Because we see it.
You can if they're not as quick as you.
Well, this is the thing.
Yeah,
they are.
if they are as quick as you, can you be friends with your teammate?
I think you can be friendly.
But not, I don't think Andy Priaulx or you, I think if me and you were teammates, or you and Andy Priaulx were teammates, I think, although you might be nice, like sort of keep your enemies close, or keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer, or however the saying goes, I think you and Andy, as an example in a team, with your intensity and competitiveness,
it would be difficult.
Even though you might be nice to each other and you might, keep them close and act as if you like them, deep down you'd do anything to beat them.
I think there's two different types of teammates, aren't there? Let's be clear. There's teammates doing this in single seaters. You're both doing F4. Yeah, they're a teammate. Then you've got GTs, sports cars, where you have a teammate for a joint goal. That's a different relationship. I think it's very difficult to be on friendly terms with anyone who is equally quick as you. I think in a team.
You have that situation.
But you can be
with
pleasant
McLaren.
and you can be professional.
Yeah.
But I don't think you can ever be, it's too serious, isn't it? They're after your drive.
Or world championship.
Or whatever it might,
So on F1 at the moment, I wanted to ask you, John, I was thinking this the other day with, I don't know if you don't really watch Formula 1 as much nowadays. Do you find it boring now? You do? Why so?
I think it's overly commercialized. It's not a sport that I really remember.
Do you think it's the lack of danger?
I think it is a bit of a lack of... I know that sounds a terrible thing. I watched...
It's human nature,
I watched... Has anyone seen the Prost documentary on BBC iPlayer.
Not yet.
No.
You definitely want to watch that. And
Sorry, in the
remember-
background, by the way, there's Hoovers.
We
going
got the
on.
cleaner.
Cleaners are here.
we could ask the cleaner to stop if you want to.
We'll literally be 5 more minutes.
Okay.
It's fine.
But he talks. He was talking about how before a race, you'd see the drivers, and they all looked a little bit haunted and concerned.
Mm.
And he said that wasn't necessarily worrying about the race. That was because we were in fear of our lives.
Yeah.
You could die. So it was different. I think an element of we like gladiatorial battles, don't we? We don't like to see anyone being hurt or injured, but we like to see people tightrope walking with no net.
Mm.
I think tracks are too safe and very, very dull nowadays. I don't know. I think the cars are ugly. I don't know if this sounds really.
John loves F1.
yeah. As much as I'd love to see my drivers get there, I'm more interested in the journey of our drivers rather than maybe the destination. I think the quality of drivers now is much better than in my day because of all the training they've had.
They've done way more sim.
They've
if you
done-
don't do simulate, if
yeah.
you don't do sim racing now, you're at a massive
Yeah.
disadvantage.
I think the quality is really good. Whether they are as competitive when push comes to shove, I don't know. But I definitely think the standard is there's some very, very good drivers out there. I'd say on the grid of Formula One now the quality is better than it was 40 years ago, 30 years ago.
Final question from me. So, with all the work he did with Andy Priaulx, he was performing at an extremely high level once he even passed 40 years old. Okay.
Yep.
At the moment, Lewis Hamilton's gone to Ferrari and he's just past 40. And there's people with opinions that that he is now, age is creeping in and his performance zone. Do you believe that's the case with age, knowing how quick Priaulx was when he was at a similar age?
I don't know whether it's a slightly different dynamic to that. I think this is quite a complicated subject you're coming up with. When he was winning all his world titles, he was opportunity focused. What's next? And then when he lost that title in the way that he did, it became, I've got to win that. He's now chasing another title. Gets a teammate with George Russell. Russell was into the sport trying to prove himself at a time where... So Hamilton's gone from opportunity, looking forward, to now, I've got to chase this last title down. And I think that's a very subtle but significant change in mindset. And so I think it's more down to that. If you took, Fangio was winning races in his 40s, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I think he didn't even win one till he was 40.
Yeah, that's...
So I don't necessarily. I think age maybe can. Alonso's still dangerous.
Yeah.
And he's older. So I think it is just a subtle change in mindset from opportunity to chase and consequence.
I think
Interesting.
Can be enough to change that dynamic.
We all personally get that. I think for instance, if you're at a race, if I'm at a race weekend in Super Cup and I know that the car is capable of pole, then you're more switched on than if you know you're having a tough weekend, which probably shouldn't be the case, but it's hard to get yourself in the same mindset. If the championship isn't an option, and if race wins and pole positions aren't an option, who really cares whether you qualify 5th or 7th or 8th or 9th? I mean, you do a bit.
He's just done too much now to be excited about driving a car that's not competitive. And he won't know that. We talk always, don't we, the subtlety of the mind, in the tricks that it's constantly playing. What is going on in his head that he is not aware of? Yeah, I think this is more. If his life suddenly depended on it, and they stripped him of all the titles he'd had because they found he cheated or something, suddenly you'd be a different animal.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I think it's much more down to that.
And final question from me before the cleaners hoover the microphones. If you could go back and give yourself advice when you're, whatever it was, 18-year-old, 19, 20-year-old John, what would you give him?
Oh, dear. It'll be okay.
Why it will be okay?
Don't stress so much over it. Don't worry so much about it. I think I was driven by a lot of insecurity. And I think I'd want to just, it's actually going to be okay. Yeah.
Okay.
If you catch me on that, that would be my thought.
That's a deep one. All right, I think we can wrap up.
Yeah, thank you so much, John.
Thank
for
you,
your time.
Jonathan.
Really appreciate it.
Did you enjoy being on Backseat Drivers?
Really good.
John's now a backseat driver.
John's a backseat driver. He's been watching our clips and everything. Right, thank you,
I think
Mr.
I always
John.
have been.